Hi, I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and this is the full video on tragic mistake number 3. Whether you're making tragic mistake number 3 that will keep you grieving forever. And what is tragic mistake 3? Is that unfinished business with your loved one in spirit is like glue that's keeping you stuck in grief. So for many people, unfinished business has a way of masquerading as grief. We think we're crying over the bodily loss of a loved one when in fact, we're actually grieving over never having received what we needed from our loved one. Let me give you an example of what I mean. A therapist named Robin came to see me because she couldn't stop grieving over her husband. She found out after he left his body that he had been cheating on her for their entire marriage. And she had been grieving now for 10 years. So we dialogued over months, and eventually she came to understand why he was cheating. He had sensed that he was going to be leaving his body at a young age, and he was so afraid that he wouldn't be able to bear being separated from her. So he cheated to dilute their connection, thinking that that would make his bodily departure easier on him and on her. And as we dialogued with him, Robin went on to make peace, and now they have a closer relationship than they ever had when he lived in a body. So, as I said in a previous video, time heals our physical wounds. A broken leg will knit. But when it comes to the psyche, time will never heal your unfinished business with someone in spirit. And what doesn't get better gets worse. If you don't heal your unfinished business, it becomes like a splinter in your soul. You risk falling into dysfunctional relationships with people who will repeat the problem you haven't resolved with your loved one in spirit. And unfinished business is a soul cancer that causes you to get sick and shortens your lifespan. You know, there's a lot of research proving that unresolved conflict causes elevated cortisol levels, which damages the endothelial cells in your arteries, which causes heart disease and strokes, weakens your immune system, makes you gain weight, puts you at risk of developing cancer, and just shortens your lifespan. Just as healing unfinished business with someone on the earth plane is a process that happens over time, so does healing unfinished business with someone in spirit. And in addition to requiring time, healing unfinished business with someone in spirit requires guidance. And sadly, you aren't going to find a professional out there who can guide you to reconnect and do this healing, because traditional Western grief therapy doesn't focus on guiding you to reconnect. Western grief therapy boils down to guiding you to let go and move on and do it in 6 months. And if you aren't over it in 6 months, psychiatrists will slap the diagnosis complicated grief syndrome on you and try to shove pills down your throat. Be careful. And I know you are feeling right now that I'm speaking to you directly, because I am. Please know, if anyone can understand the depth of the sorrow of never being able to speak to your loved one about the unfinished business, and what's more, as a child of abuse, what this has done to you and how it's impacted your life in so many ways, I know, I get it. I've been there. So my transdimensional grief resolution method and my dialoguing with the departed technique, I am convinced, is the only method that enables you to reconnect and heal your unfinished business once and for all. So how does my method enable you to heal? I guide you to heal using my dialoguing with the departed technique, which enables you to engage in a back and forth, out loud, direct dialogue between you and your loved one. And I guide you to continue your dialoguing until you feel resolved. And by the way, you don't even need to believe in the afterlife to gain so much from what will lead to an enormous shift in your relationship to life, just following my method. Now, when it comes to healing unfinished business with your loved one in spirit, there's more than one thing you need to know. Contrary to what we've been taught, if someone leaves his or her body before we had a chance to work it out, we think we're SOL. Well, it turns out nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, we often have to wait until a loved one leaves his or her body in order to work it out. Why? Well, for one thing, when they leave their bodies, they receive a life review and they discover how they screwed up with us. And this knowledge makes them more ready to work it out with us. How did I learn this? Well, it was the first week following my husband in spirits, Jean's bodily departure. I had to bring my car in for service, and I didn't know anyone at the garage since Jean took care of the car repairs. So I walked in, I introduced myself to the lady at the desk, and I told her what had just happened to Jean. She said, "I'm a widow too." Well, with that, her husband began banging down my door with a message for her. And he said, "Tell her to stop making the same mistake with our son that I fell into." And he said that she was creating the same power struggle with their son that he himself had. Well, when I told her this, she burst into tears and she admitted it was true. Now, for me, the important point was the fact that her husband needed to be out of his body to realize where he'd gone wrong. That's why one of my patients said, "I wish my mother would hurry up and die so we can work this out." That's no joke. Now, here's another important point. Those in spirit need to work it out with us in order for them to evolve spiritually, just as much as we need to work it out with them. So the healing is a win-win for everyone. How do I know this? Well, it was my first Good Friday following Jean's bodily departure, and I felt led to visit a woman named Lainey who sells exotic birds. I hadn't spoken to her or seen her for 5 years since we put Fluffy, our sweet canary, to sleep, and I knew nothing about Lainey's personal life. So as I approached her house, I felt like I'd been sent to help her with one of her birds. And as soon as I walked inside, she showed me a young female finch. She said that it was dying. And she explained that finches can't go more than a day without food, and this little one hadn't eaten for a day. And Lainey said that she wouldn't last much longer. And the bird sat motionless on the perch, and her feathers were all puffed up. And I asked Lainey if I could try to heal the bird, and she said, okay. So I walked over to the bird cage, and I pressed my cheek to the thin metal bars. Now, normally having someone this close would distress a bird, but this bird wasn't distressed. And as I began to talk to the bird, she became aware of my presence, and then she started to get excited. She started jumping up and down, and she even began flying. And I told her aloud that I wanted her to go to her seed bowl and start eating. And she obeyed me immediately. And the more she ate, the stronger she became, and the more she wanted to eat. And by this point, she was scarfing up seeds like a little mini vacuum cleaner. And it was then that I felt a tidal wave of love and realized that it was Jean who had led me here. And in this elegantly orchestrated manifestation, he was simultaneously blessing Lainey by allowing me to save her bird and also giving me the blessing of saving her bird the way I couldn't save our Fluffy. Now I sensed two spirit presences surrounding Lainey, and I picked up an extreme sense of urgency, like they were beating down my door in their eagerness to speak to her. And I also had the sense that they'd been waiting for a long time to reach her, and that they were relieved that I'd finally heard the call and was there to help them talk to her. And at that moment, I saw that the bird had sensed their presence as well, and she looked distressed again, and she started stretching her head heavenward. And it occurred to me that the spirit presences surrounding Lainey may have been upsetting this little creature and may have caused her sickness. So I told the bird aloud, "Don't worry about these spirits." And I was speaking aloud to make it easier for me to transmit a clear energetic message, but also I can silently transmit a message to animals and they understood me all the same. But in this case, I spoke aloud because I wanted Lainey to hear what I was saying, that I was here to help Lainey with the spirits and the bird should return to her meal, and she did. Now I heard a female spirit presence say to Lainey, "I'm so sorry that I was such a weakling and I didn't protect you." Now, when I repeated that word to Lainey, weakling, it struck me as an odd term. It's not a word I've ever used. And I sensed it was Lainey's mother speaking, but I didn't know Lainey's mom was in spirit. So I asked Lainey if those words made sense to her, and she said, yeah, they do. And she said it was her mom talking, and her mother always used the word weakling. So notice that those in spirit will often use specific words to validate their presence or figures of speech that were idiosyncratic to them. Now I heard her mother expanding on her previous message, and she said, "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from your father." And Lainey confirmed that this was true. Now, at that moment, I felt a man desperately trying to reach out to Lainey, and I said, "There's a man who wants to speak to you, and he wants you to know you're safe. He can't hurt you anymore." And as I said that, I felt my eyes being drawn to this cranberry colored blown glass ball hanging from the ceiling. And I was confused for a minute because it was identical to a gift that I gave to someone 5 years before, but I couldn't remember, did I give it to her? And I asked, did I give this to you? And she said, no. She said, I bought it. It's a witching ball to protect me from the spirit of my father. And then I realized her father had drawn my attention to the ball as a way to get her to talk about her ongoing fear of him. And she said, I'm still afraid of him. And her father told me, I'm not asking you to forgive me for your own sake as well as mine. All I ask is that you confront me. Now is the time to make me face up what I did to you. Don't protect me. You need this for your own healing, and I need you to help me face the truth in order for me to evolve spiritually. Well, that experience was a first for me, and it utterly amazed me because I discovered that in order to progress spiritually, those who have passed over actually need us to help them in their evolution. And here is the beauty of the process. As we help those in spirit to evolve, we're helping ourselves. And as my example shows, Lainey remained frozen in time, trapped in childhood, because the feelings associated with the trauma she suffered as a child hadn't been resolved. So she continued to drown in the terror of a little girl who doesn't feel safe. Dialoguing with her father through me was just what she needed to help them both heal and evolve. And by the time I left Lainey that day, she was standing taller, she felt less afraid of her father, and her little bird made it too. So the dialogue is a great beginning for Lainey, but it's only a beginning. So where did Lainey need to go? Where do you need to go from here? And where you need to go is you need my guidance. I said before, reconnecting and dialoguing to heal unfinished business requires guidance. And I am here to help you with that. I am here to help you begin your dialoguing, to get over the pain of your loss, to heal the unfinished business that's keeping you chained to your grief. So click on the link in this video and grab one of the few grief relief sessions that I'm offering now at a discounted fee. Let's get you started on breaking the chains. See you soon.